Hi, welcome to the first Women's Circle podcast. I'm Emily Gold.
I'm Claudia Kaiser.
And today's topic is
stress.
So Claudia, you want to define stress for us?
Of course. So the common definition of stress would be something like a state of mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from adverse or demanding circumstances. And obviously I've read that now. So synonyms are strain, pressure, tension, nervous tension, worry, anxiety, nervousness, etc. So kind of classic stressors in our lives are obviously related to work, relationship, money, health, everything that we kind of worry about or that gives us tension or anxiety. However, there are also somewhat less obvious stressors like certain foods that you eat or toxins from the environment, lack of sleep, lack of exercise, or also unresolved conflicts, for example. Oh. But even feelings, like feelings of guilt or shame or anger, resentment, fears, either that are conscious to you or not, that you keep maybe locked up down deep inside, and that are usually tied to certain thoughts and beliefs you hold about yourself, about other people, or just about the way this world works. So those might not feel like stress to you, but they nevertheless put you in this so-called stress response. Emily, would you like to talk more about that?
Sure, happy to. Stress response. Thank you for that. I think that's like the perfect definition of how we think of stress today. I'm just going to take a step back for one moment and just talk a little bit about one part of our nervous system, the autonomic, excuse me, and English is my first language. The autonomic nervous system, specifically the two parts of it, the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Don't worry, this isn't a physiology lesson, but I just want to point out that there are two parts. We have the sympathetic nervous system. That's our fight or flight response that I'm going to talk about in a bit, as well as our parasympathetic nervous system, and that is what produces our relaxation response, which I think sounds much nicer, and we'll talk about that.
Could you also say yin and yang?
Yeah, so you can think about it from a yogic perspective. Thank you, I always like thinking about that. And you would have this idea of yang, or your fight or flight, which is going to be our very energized, muscular, ready-to-go response, and our parasympathetic response, which is going to be our much more relaxed response. So I'll start by just getting a little bit into fight or flight. I think a lot of people probably know that term, but just in case you don't really know what it means, our body has these natural responses to anything that is perceived as stress, even if we're not conscious of it being stress, as Claudia just mentioned. And that's a response that comes from thousands of years of evolution. So back in the day, our ancestors were facing stresses like lack of food, escaping predators, and finding shelter. And we have absolutely great responses to these stresses. When we feel stressed, our body often slows down digestion to preserve energy, it sends more blood to the heart, and it encourages faster breathing. These are all great things for those stresses that would be useful.
If you want to run away from a lion, right? Yeah.
If a lion is chasing you, it doesn't matter if you're digesting your food.
Indeed.
You need oxygen and you need blood to the heart. So when we feel stressed, our body often slows down this digestion to preserve energy. Unfortunately, for much of us in the Western world at least, we're very lucky that we don't have to face those particular stresses anymore. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, our stresses look more like having to pay the bills. Mm-hmm. Your boss wants you to do all this work. You have different issues with your spouses. But our bodies still respond to these stresses in the same exact way they would respond to a lion chasing us.
Wow.
Yeah. And to add to this, our stresses tend to pile on. So back in the day, let's say a lion chased you. A lion was chasing you. Somehow you got away. Maybe it caught an antelope or something else instead. Once that lion was gone, it was gone. You could relax. But today, our stresses tend to not go away, and they often pile on. And the way our body works, and I think this is probably a little bit outside of today's topic, we start getting into a bit of chronic stress where it stops even mattering if the stress is really there because our body just starts continuing this stress response. And
I think it's not too much off topic because in the end, that's the major problem, right? It's not so much the stress itself, it's more the continuous stress that we perceive maybe. It's maybe not even about the stress being there, but just of our perception about it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And the fact that, exactly, that we're still perceiving it, whether or not it's still there. And part of that has to do because our body is telling us that we're still stressed. So with that, you want to talk a little bit about what all this stress does to our bodies?
Well, typically, if you are in this stress response, there are certain hormones which are released. So first, when you get stressed, there's adrenaline. Of course, everybody knows that, when you are on a roller coaster or something, it's usually the adrenaline that you're looking for, right?
Yes.
It's what kicks in quickly. And then there's the cortisol, which is the one that comes when the stress continues. And it's also the one that tends to stay up high longer. For, adrenaline is more the quick boost.
It's
and
like
then,
right away when you say you have like an adrenaline rush.
Yeah, exactly. And then it quickly goes down again.
Okay.
And then there's the cortisol if it's a prolonged stress kind of.
Okay.
And if now you think also, for example, about if you're running a marathon, etc., it can also be that the cortisol, so the stress, because running a marathon is also a stressor to the body, that it stays up for quite a long time after the stress has actually finished. So this is important to know because oftentimes today, since we continuously are faced with new stressors or constant stressors, it never really goes down again. And this can then lead into many problems.
Yeah.
But what actually is happening when you are in this stress response, meaning this cortisol is up? What's happening? So as Emily already said, since it's a fight or flight response, which evolutionary was meant to save your life, running from a lion, while all other functions of the body that are not crucial for immediate survival get suppressed or at least decreased, which means digestion, tissue repair, but also reproduction. So here the fertility comes into play, why people always say you should not stress about it, and they are right, even though it's maybe hard to do, in practice. So a few effects of cortisol on the body. So all hormones basically, or not all hormones, but many hormones are made from cholesterol. So we can have another
cholesterol.
We can actually have another podcast on why cholesterol is not necessarily a bad thing.
Mind blown. Oh my god.
But just so you have a pot of cholesterol and the hormones are produced from it. If now you make constantly cortisol, the stress hormone, that means all the others, which are kind of in this moment second priority, they get suppressed and or decreased. So for example, thyroid hormones, sex hormones. And this can then, of course, lead to long-term imbalances.
Yeah.
So when you're in a stress response, then digestion, as I already mentioned, but not only digestion, also assimilation, even calorie burning are affected. So when you're stressed, there's about 4 times less blood flow to the gut. There's 20,000 times less digestive enzymes, which it's even hard to imagine what that means for our digestion, but it's definitely going to be affected negatively. So you could actually be eating super healthy food, but if you eat it under stress, you might not actually get a lot out of it. And you might actually even start excreting nutrients, which happens also under the stress response. So there's a link between bone loss, for example, and stress. So it's not only the calcium supplements which play a role. What else do we have? Cortisol also increases blood sugar, which is, of course, normal because you're supposed to run from a lion and you need quick energy. So it's a good thing, but the problem is, if it's continuously like that, it's also elevating insulin, which is this hormone which is supposed to store the excess sugars in your cells. But that's not what the body wants, because it wants the sugar to help you run from the lion. So it decreases actually the cell's sensitivity to this insulin. So to make a long story short, in the end, this can actually lead to diabetes. So, even without eating sugar, just by being stressed, you could become diabetic.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, although, of course, when you're stressed, usually you tend to also crave more sugars and caffeine, etc., which then, of course, makes the whole problem worse. But just in theory, it could also be from being chronically stressed.
Is that because you're using the sugar, because there's more sugar?
Well, because cortisol elevates your blood sugar.
As well. Yes, thank you.
It elevates the blood sugar because you need quick energy to run from the lion or to think more quickly.
And is that why you crave sugar? Because it's increasing the blood sugar, so the body.
Well, in the end, if this continues and you start producing cortisol over and over, it's also exhausting your cortisol producing gland, which is the adrenal glands. Yes. And then, you lack energy, and of course, quick energy is sugar, so this is why you crave it. But it could indeed also be related to the fact that you have chronically high insulin in the blood because there's all that sugar, but since this insulin is not going to be used because your cells get less sensitive, well, you might crave more sugar because the insulin wants to be used, right?
Okay.
To make a long story short, chronic stress elevates the risk to develop diabetes or pre-diabetes, or at least blood sugar imbalances. Which again is then a stressor to the body. So you have this kind of vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Right? Well, insulin and cortisol, they unfortunately also they are signaling to the body to store fat, to not build muscle. So again, if you're chronically stressed and you're working out like crazy and you're not eating because you're trying to lose weight, well, actually, you could be harming your body in the sense that you're putting yourself under chronic stress, which will then actually impede you to lose weight and to build muscle. So quite the contrary from what
the body thinks it's starving.
Exactly. It's a stress response, and then you're actually not losing any weight, you're not gaining any muscle, and well, to the contrary, you're actually even gaining weight, especially around the midsection. So there's many things. It also, as I said, prevents the repair of tissues. It makes you age quicker. It even alters your gut flora. It's killing off gut bacteria, the healthy ones. And of course, if we consider that like 70 to 80% of the immune system lies in the gut, and that there's a strong link between the gut and the health of the rest of the body, like including the brain, it's quite worrisome, right? Yeah. So that being said, it sounds now like cortisol is the enemy and it's really a bad guy, etc. That's not the whole story. I mean, stress is not intrinsically good or bad. Yeah. Like, the sun or the rain, they are not intrinsically bad or good. Or
the yin and yang example.
The yin and the yang, right? Yeah,
perfect. We need some of both.
Exactly.
You can't just be yin all the time. You can't never be stressed.
Exactly.
Your body needs to have that stress response.
It's very important.
It can handle actual stresses.
Exactly. It's very important. So this is what they call homeostasis in the body, right? You always have the muscle contracting and relaxing, right? It's always the opposites, and we need both of them, just like you're saying. So the problem is only when they last too long or they get too extreme, one side or the other. With all that being said, so what can we do actually about stress?
Well, I would love to say let's all just go on yoga retreat forever, but we can't just be relaxed all the time, even if we wanted and had the means to be. But one really great thing you might have heard is yoga. So you guys know I'm a yoga teacher, so I'm obviously going to say that. But yoga actually has been proven again and again to reduce stress. There's so many reasons for this. Definitely enough for their own podcast, which maybe we'll do one day.
Okay, tell us the most important ones.
I'm going to tell you some of the most important ones. And they basically have to do with the physical practice of yoga, the asanas, the breath work, the pranayama, as well as the meditation. Because what these all do induce the opposite of the stress response, which is known as the relaxation response, which actually gives us sort of the opposite response of what Claudia had just described. I won't explain everything again, but the hormones that she just described going up start going down, the blood starts flowing a bit better, the breath can get rather longer because our body goes into the opposite response of as if a lion was chasing us. So yoga gives us a lot of tools to do this. There's a couple studies that show that yoga has helped people actually perceive less stress and actually lowers cortisol levels after yoga practice. So that's kind of awesome. Improving oxygen intake is actually really, really important for reducing stress. It's kind of, again, another one of those cycles. So all this stuff is about cycles, because when we're stressed, we end up taking faster, shorter breaths because we need that fast oxygen because we're being chased by that lion. But then again, our body just starts adapting to that. The way our lungs start breathing in, the way we even hold ourselves starts adapting us towards these really short, shallow breaths, breathing into the chest. What yoga can actually help us do is start practicing taking deeper breaths into the diaphragm, into the lungs. So it does that in two ways. For one, we do a lot of practice breath work in certain kinds of yoga where you actually start training the breath. But even just a lot of yoga poses, you start opening up the whole chest area, your posture gets a bit stronger, and you might just notice even without the pranayama work that you start taking more oxygen in. and slowing down the exhale. Slowing down the exhale is huge. You've heard me say, because you've come to some of my
I was
yoga
just
classes.
thinking that if you imagine that you're underwater and you're not getting any air, it gives you stress, right?
Yeah,
because you're kind of
totally.
suffocating. So you
Yeah.
can imagine from a cellular point of view, if you don't get enough oxygen, that this is a stressor.
Exactly.
Right?
And what happens is, because we're in this chronic stress, we start getting into the system where we're not taking very deep breaths very, very often. And our lifestyles, the way we start sitting, if you sit in front of a computer all day, and I know I'm guilty of this when I'm working, but if you sit sort of in what I like to call slouchasana, your body starts taking on the shape where the shoulders come forward and the lungs can expand as greatly. So that's all worth noticing. So yoga, we start working on actually out doing some of that. And encouraging movement can actually utilize some of that extra adrenaline and cortisol. So that's a really big one. So as much as as everyone who's come take a class with me knows, I love my yin yoga, I love my restorative yoga, really, really important. Also important to move a bit, to actually absorb some of that. You need to use some of that yang energy to absorb some of it. So that's huge. And I always say practicing yoga should make you feel good. If you're in a yoga class that you dread or you don't feel good at the end,
if it's an additional stressor on your to-do list,
then it's not good for you. But when it feels good, that's probably because serotonin is being released, which is, again, countering some of that cortisol a bit. Another huge one is that mindfulness. So mindfulness encourages the brain of being aware of how exactly the mind is working in the present moment. Essentially what it is just tuning into what your brain is doing right now. Because when you're stressed, you're almost never in the present moment right here, right now. Even if the stress is happening right this second, you missed your train, you're not actually thinking about missing the train. You're thinking about how you're going to be late for work, and your boss is going to be angry at you, and he was angry at you last week, and you know, then this is going to happen.
And then you panic, and you cannot think clearly anymore.
Exactly. And so with some mindfulness, you start noticing, okay, I missed my train, and I'm getting upset. But why am I getting upset? And you start noticing a little bit of what's going on. Okay, I'm getting upset. My shoulders are getting tight. You might start noticing that. So it's really nice in the present moment. But what's actually really cool is the brain is a bit plastic. So you can actually retrain your brain so that if every time right now you come home and there's dishes in the sink and your spouse and your kids haven't done the dishes and that just makes you angry and you get tense and then you yell at them and then you're all fighting the whole night. Over time, you can start actually noticing how your brain works, let's say if that's the stress, and you start remolding how you respond to that stress.
And you can maybe consciously release the tension before you actually start yelling.
So instead of yelling, you would maybe say, hey guys, you know, I'm not going to tell you how to clean your house, but you start breathing and change your reaction to that. And so it starts as something that maybe happens consciously, but after a while, the brain starts doing that on its own. And that has been scientifically shown again and again. So when you start practicing, you may discover that your mind can start transitioning, which is awesome. And the other great thing is relaxation. Whether it's yin yoga or restorative yoga, at no other time than during Shavasana. And I know Shavasana is the favorite part of a lot of people when they come to yoga, because it's one of the only times that we ever take in our day to relax. But if you're so stressed, some people hate Shavasana because they feel like they can't relax. So that's why we want to actually start doing all these other things to train the body so that when you come into Shavasana, you can actually go into this relaxation response. So we're going to talk a little bit more, but the end of this tape, I think, will end with a little bit of a guided relaxation response meditation.
Wow. Nice.
So
stay with us.
Yeah, if you haven't left us yet.
So it's great all that you mentioned, what we can do with yoga, mindfulness, breathing, meditation.
What about food?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
what
all
you
of
eat?
this can be enhanced and further fueled by taking in the right fuel, the right nutrients, the right tools that will allow your body to function at its best and to allow all these processes to happen in the end, right?
So you'll give us exactly what to eat, right?
Well, I wish I could. You know, in the end, nutrition is something very individual, and different people need different things to be in balance. But there are nevertheless some basic rules, and I'm going to talk more about that now. But don't expect me now to give you like the magic solution. That's not going to happen. It's going to be a quest for you, where of course you can be assisted. And I'm happy to help you if ever that's interesting for you. But okay, let's go more into the basics, because it doesn't even make sense to start going into the fine-tuning before you haven't gotten the basics right. Okay? So one thing for me that's huge is really eating clean. So meaning eating organic or similar. It doesn't have to be certified organic, but from someone who's not using pesticides. Because we're already living in this quite toxic world where there's lots of pollution. So it all adds up in the end to the work our body has to kind of get rid of all that, and the more it is occupied with neutralizing toxins and getting them out of the body, the less it has actually time and resources to do the actual work, the repairing and all of that. The less toxins you take in, that's already going to take away a huge stressor from your body. Another one that's huge is blood sugar. It's really important to keep your blood sugar stable, because when blood sugar gets too high or too low, so if you have these fluctuations going on, this is a major stressor to the body because they are both potentially life-threatening. So
And I get hangry. Is that what this is when I'm yelling at my husband because we haven't gotten our food yet at the restaurant?
Yeah, I mean, typically, often women go into this low blood sugar at some point where they get really irritable and feel like they need their food now and or it's better even half an hour ago. And it can happen from one moment to the other, right?
Yes.
And so yes, indeed, this is low blood sugar response. And actually high blood sugar can quickly turn into low blood sugar. So this is once you get really sensitive there, then it can really change from 1 minute to the next. And what happens then is you're again in the stress response. So that means again, your digestion is decreased, assimilation is decreased, muscle building stops, calorie burning gets decreased, and fat storage goes up, loss of nutrients goes up, and bone loss goes up. So it's really an important part. And how do we do it? Well, as I already said, different people will require different methods, but in general, there's certain foods that we rather avoid. Yeah, sugar, obviously, and then I'm talking especially about the refined sugar, but also we have to be careful with too much of the so-called natural sugars.
Okay.
So even though those are better, like
So
honey or even fruit,
Okay.
they are better, but they still can cause quite strong blood sugar reactions in sensitive people. So if you want to really find out, get a glucometer in the pharmacy and measure it, and it can really reveal interesting things to you. The same is true for other foods that people don't necessarily think as of sugar, but that act like sugar in the body. And that's, for example, bread, especially the white bread, but also some whole grain bread, pasta, or all these kind of baked goods, even potatoes, potato chips, they tend to be converted into glucose, so like basically are sugar to the body, and can cause quite severe blood sugar peaks.
So we might as well just leave Brussels.
The French fries, the beer, indeed.
The chocolate.
Alcohol, caffeine also, they tend to increase blood sugar. A good rule of thumb that I like to give is to try to, at every meal, combine the 3 macronutrients. And macronutrients are carbohydrates, fats, and proteins.
Okay.
So ideally have slow carbohydrates like vegetables, lots of vegetables, some pulses or whole grains, healthy fats, and they're really no limits to that. I mean, obviously there's also individual ideal amounts, but in general it's better to have more fat than too many carbohydrates. Yeah. And we can talk more about fats on another occasion.
I would love to.
But in general, like healthy fats, I mean coconut, butter, I mean fatty fish, I mean avocados, these kind of things. Yeah. And of course also have your clean proteins. Here I talk about grass-fed meat, sustainable fish, eggs, raw dairy, bone broth is something I like. Nuts and seeds, of course, can also be included. So we have to avoid these carb-only meals, which often people have. Either they have in the morning like a toast with marmalade and orange juice and coffee, which is carbohydrate only, or they have at lunch then pasta with tomato sauce, carbohydrate only. It's easy to fall into this, especially now with this idea that we should become more vegetarian.
And the whole low-fat thing, which I think is not as trendy as it was, but I think a lot of us still kind of
are afraid of fats and think fat makes you fat, which is absolutely not true.
We're going to need to talk about that.
Actually, excess sugar is converted into fat. That's another story indeed. Another major stressor when it comes to food is to avoid foods that you are potentially intolerant to. Eating foods that you're intolerant to is as if you were sitting on a seat of nails. It's constantly hurting you in a way. And then again, the more stressed you are, the more likely you are actually to be intolerant to food. So it's also, again, a vicious cycle. So, well, I have not talked about one very important part yet, which is, of course, the how you eat.
Yes.
talking about mindfulness, right?
Yeah.
It's not only about the what, although this is very important, but as I mentioned before, you could be eating the healthiest food, and still, if you're stressed, digestion and assimilation will not be ideal. Or if you're feeling guilty about what you're eating, or somehow worrying if it's now super healthy or if it's really good for you. So stressing about food is actually also, so we have to keep the balance.
So you're not saying never to enjoy those fruits and the chocolate?
No, actually it's much better that if you choose to have them, that you really choose to have them and enjoy them and not have them and at the same time be kind of feeling guilty about it and worrying, then it's double bad, you know.
Because you're taking out all the stress again.
Exactly. Yeah. So mindful eating, or putting yourself into a relaxation response to eat, is actually a very important advice, and a very easy one actually, because in principle you don't even have to change anything you eat. And don't be scared, it doesn't mean that you have now to spend 2 hours per meal or to chew like 200 times every bite. Even if you only have like 15 minutes to eat, you know, you can already sit down, take away your phone, take away your computer, take some breath, focus on your food. That will already make it a big difference.
I think that's huge, just being able to actually enjoy your food, which we're not very good at as a society.
It's true.
Even here in Europe, which if you're listening in North America is better than North America.
I'm not saying now, of course, that we should just eat whatever, but it's finding this balance and not stressing too much if ever you have something that would maybe not be considered the ideal food from a nutritional point of view. But.
And I would add probably being aware of how your body responds to this stuff.
Exactly.
So if you know that you do get low blood sugar, making sure you do have something healthy to eat with you at all times. So whether it's, you know, peanut butter, or I know you're not a big peanut butter fan, but another nut butter, almond butter, or almond butter?
Coconut.
Coconut butter, that stuff's good. You guys should come to Claudia's store and taste this coconut butter.
Yeah, but actually you're completely right. And the more mindful you eat, the more you listen, and also, hey, how does this food actually make me feel? Does it make me actually feel good? The more likely you're also going to be to make choices that are healthier for you in the long run, because you get aware more of, oh, okay, I might enjoy now this piece of cake in the short run, but actually later I get whatever symptom and maybe it's not worth to have it that often.
I love how it all comes together. I would say I would invite everyone to get relaxed, and we can close up with our relaxation response meditation. I'll invite everyone to get a comfortable position. So you can sit down or you can lie down. They're both really, really nice. If you're sitting, I'll invite you to be somewhere where you can be comfortable, but you're also open. So if comfortable for you feels slouched forward, maybe sit somewhere instead where you can sort of have your chest open, the shoulders can be back. You can remember a little bit about what I talked about with the lung capacity. So take yourself to that comfortable position. I'll invite you to close your eyes. If closing your eyes isn't working for you today, you can instead just soften them down so they're unfocused. And we'll right away begin to scan the body. So we're going to start with the tops of the head, and you can just bring your awareness to your top of your head, and then you can bring your awareness to your forehead. So just feeling your forehead. You don't have to touch it. You don't have to move it. Bringing your awareness to your ears and your eyes behind the lids, and your nose and your mouth. Let the jaw relax if it's tight. You can bring the awareness to your neck and your shoulders, noticing if there's any tension held there. And then you can bring your awareness to your upper arms, your elbows, your lower arms, and let them relax. You can bring your awareness to your wrists and your hands and your fingers, and let them unclench and relax. And you can bring the awareness to your chest and your belly, and let them relax. And bring your awareness to your back, and let the upper back, middle back, and lower back relax onto anything it's being supported by, or just relaxing along. And you can bring your awareness to your hips and your pelvis, and let them relax. And bring your awareness to your thighs and your knees and your shins and let them relax. And you can bring your awareness to your ankles and your feet and your toes and let them soften and relax. Feeling the whole right side of the body relaxed and feeling the whole left side of the body relaxed. And we're going to take our awareness now right to our breath. So without changing the breath, which I know sometimes is hard when you are asked to bring your awareness to it, seeing if you can keep your breath normal, just begin to pay attention to it. You can notice the intensity of the breath as it comes in and the intensity of the breath as it comes out. You can notice the temperature of the breath as it comes in and the temperature of the breath as it comes out. So breathing through either your nose or your mouth, whichever is more comfortable. You can notice how that changes as you inhale and as you exhale. And then you can begin to notice how the breath feels as it enters your body. Maybe you feel the lungs expand, the diaphragm expand, and how it feels when it leaves the body. Maybe the ribs come back together, the diaphragm releases. That's the next time you inhale, noticing anywhere else you feel the breath. And as you exhale, noticing anywhere else you feel the breath. So we're going to continue to stay with the breath. And what I'll invite you to do is just begin to silently in your head label your breaths. So you'll label your inhale, inhale, and you'll label your exhale, exhale. So each time you inhale, you'll say silently to yourself, inhale. And each time you exhale, you'll say silently to yourself, exhale. If you get distracted, when you notice it, come right back to the breath. Come right back to that next inhale and label it. And then right back to that next exhale. And even if every breath is another reminder to come back, that's a great opportunity for mindfulness. Remembering you can always come back to your labeled inhale and your labeled exhale. There's no judgment in this. There's just awareness. So we'll be here for just a few more breaths, letting that be your invitation to continue to label that inhale and that exhale. So the next time you inhale, you can let it be a little bit deeper. The next time you exhale, you can let it be a little bit deeper and slower. And you can start bringing your awareness back to your body, noticing your head and your shoulders. Bringing the awareness down both arms and the hands. Bringing the awareness to the chest and the belly and the back And letting the awareness come back to the legs and the feet. You can start to add a bit of movement. Maybe wiggle your fingers and your toes. And gently open your eyes. So knowing that in just a few minutes you can induce the relaxation response, and you can do that at any time, just 5 minutes. And with that, I think we'll tell you to have a very nice day. Claudia's looking
so
all blissed out. She's all relaxation
Oh.
response, so I will tell you to tune in soon. We'll have another podcast coming your way. If you have any topics you'd like to hear us discuss, we'd love to hear them, and you can listen up or check out some of our other information to get in contact with us.
Emily, tell us where we can find you.
So you can find me if you're interested in anything around yoga and mind-body and or reproductive health. I work a lot in public health around reproductive health, and I put those two together around women's yoga, women's health and wellness. So if you do want to find me, the best place to find me is on my Facebook site, which is Emily Gold, Yoga, Doula, and Wellness Services, as well as on my website, which is emilygoldyoga.com. Okay, Claudia, what about you? How do we find you?
I'm also online. You find me at www.metabalance.com. I'm working as a nutrition counselor, metabolic typing advisor, soon to be eating psychology coach. So basically holistic nutrition is my topic, holistic and individualized mind-body nutrition. So I offer individual coaching, workshops for groups, and also corporate consulting services. And I run a shop for nourishing and sustainable real food in Brussels and online, where I collaborate basically with small organic farms from Belgium for the fresh food and select a range of high-quality dry and non-food items to complete the portfolio. And all of that you can find at www.metabalance.com or on Facebook. Great. Thanks for listening.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.